Hello, future servers. Don Beck with the Brown County Tavern League. Actually sitting here with Scott Stenger. He is a lobbyist with the Tavern League of Wisconsin. Thanks for coming today. Sure, appreciate it. We're going to talk about some alcohol laws and stuff, but let's do a little backdrop first. Tell me about how long you've been in the industry now, including like alcohol and Chapter 125.
I've amazingly 28 years I've been doing this.
Gosh.
And then prior to that, we worked as a staff in the legislature. So
okay.
I've been involved with the Tavern League for finishing up my 28th year, and the time has flown. My hair isn't around anymore, but the industry will do that to me.
Great. Now, throughout this this segment, we're going to talk about Chapter 125 law. Not a lot of people taking this course knows what the heck that means. Can you give kind of a 101 on Chapter 125?
Yeah, it's complicated, but really not that complicated.
Sure.
So what I mean is that we had the repeal of prohibition.
Yep.
And after we repealed prohibition, Congress told states that you regulate alcohol. So they gave that authority to states to regulate with some parameters. And so each state has a distinct ability to regulate the sale and distribution of alcohol under a basic parameter that the federal government has set. So what we chose to do in Wisconsin is create Chapter 125. All of that part of the statute is dedicated to the regulation, enforcement of laws regarding the sale, distribution, and consumption of alcohol. So it is complicated,
yeah,
but there is a method to the madness.
Sure.
And it's serious.
Yeah.
And we follow it. We want to make sure our members understand the law, and we want to make sure we can use that information to educate not just our members, but the public.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a controlled substance.
Yeah.
Not everybody is legally permitted to drink alcohol. And so we want to make sure we know the laws, we want to make sure our members and servers know those laws, and that the public is better protected. Because ultimately, that's what this is about, making sure the public has some protection and some understanding that people that are in the alcohol industry meet certain guidelines.
That is very interesting stuff. So what is your day-to-day as far as working with this type of legislation?
Well, it varies, which is kind of why I like the job.
Sure.
It differs a lot. I deal a lot with legislators who will say, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of those ideas we've already heard of. They're either not a good idea, or if it is, it's something we try to work on to have it become law. So I work a lot with legislators, with their staff, educating them about what's important to the industry. And I also spend a lot of time with our members, answering their questions, going to their meetings, and kind of being a liaison between state and federal government and our membership. So it's interesting. There is a wealth of information that's out there, and it's important that we understand it, and to make sure when we have questions from our members that they get what they need and they understand.
Well, just like you said, I'm sure it's something different every day, whether you're getting a call from a legislator or a bar owner or somebody from a county level.
Yeah, and
city clerk's office, that sort of thing.
And sometimes people say, this doesn't make any sense. And so what I try to do is say, let me explain to you why.
Yeah.
And after you do that, they say, well, it makes a little more sense, and I think I can understand why the law is that way. So that's the biggest challenge. And I think the other thing that I do is when we see changes in the law, one of the bills that we were very proud of is funding of our Safe Ride program.
Sure.
And the program got to be so successful, and this was, ironically, this was the goal, to have it successful to run out of money.
Yeah.
But when we did, we thought, well, let's go to the legislature and ask them to help fund this program with a surcharge on convicted OWIs.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We increased the funding. And so now we take those OWIs that are convictions and help to be able to fund our program that provides
safe rides for
free
people.
Safe rides home.
What a beautiful irony that is.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's a great program. We talked a lot about it throughout this course, and it's a fantastic way to make sure that your patrons are getting home responsibly. You talk about some of the laws that could be confusing, and that when people say this doesn't make any sense. Well, if you're a new licensed server entering the free range of licensed establishments throughout the state, what are some laws that might be confusing for them and they might have trouble kind of comprehending?
Well, the first thing I think that servers have to understand is they're not selling cookies.
Yeah.
You're selling a controlled substance. It's serious. And you have to take that job and responsibility seriously. So you have to know what your responsibilities are, know what the laws are. One area we hear a lot of questions about is if somebody, a 17, 18-year-old, son or daughter is with their parents and they're having a pizza, and they want to have a drink. Now it's up to the owner of that establishment that can say.
Always have the right to refuse.
They have
service
the
to
right.
anyone.
They have that
Yeah.
right, and they can say, I don't want anyone under the legal drinking age drinking at this establishment.
Sure.
But the law does provide that if you are with your parent, guardian, or spouse, and the owner says that he or she is okay, you can serve that individual. So one of the areas where we get a lot of questions is, well, what if you're 19? You no longer are
You're over 18, you're under 21, you're
right.
in that window, sure.
And you still, although some people might not want the fact that you still have a parent, you
Yeah.
still have guardians, or you still could be with a spouse.
Yeah.
So just because you're 19, that law isn't applicable. It is applicable.
Yeah.
So it's anyone under the legal drinking age.
Yeah, so you could be 20 and be with your parents in an
and
establishment.
legally consume if that is what the
That's privy to the owner and what they
Right.
would have. So always ask your boss first.
Right.
You know,
And one
that's-
other area that we have a lot of questions is closing time.
Sure.
Now, years ago, 30 years ago, we did not have uniform closing in this state.
Oh, okay.
Milwaukee had a different closing time than Madison. And what was happening is people were driving. Madison
No.
was much earlier.
Yeah.
People were driving to Milwaukee, which was much later. And obviously that's not
What
smart.
you want to have
Yeah.
happen, yeah.
So the legislature said, this isn't a good idea, let's have uniform closing. And one of the caveats with that was they established 2 o'clock during the week, 2:30 on the weekends, statewide.
Friday, Saturday night, 2:30.
Correct, Friday, actually it's Saturday, Sunday, but yeah,
Yeah.
Friday night and Saturday night's business. But one of the critical components of that is municipalities, you can't change this.
Yeah.
So in order for that to work, we had to preempt, the legislature had to preempt the ability for municipalities to say, well, we want it to be 1 or 12 or 2:30. And so we've had some questions, well, my municipality, and some people just might not know.
Yeah.
You know, they want to have a closing time earlier for us than other areas.
Mhm.
And you can't do that. It's a uniform, doesn't mean you have to stay open,
Yeah.
but the municipality cannot restrict your hours of business in a licensed establishment.
How about the confusion that servers might have with like daylight savings or like New Year's?
Yeah, and those, again, that seems like it should be so simple. but
Yeah.
Nothing is simple. If it
Nothing
were
is,
simple,
yeah.
I wouldn't need it. They wouldn't need to hire me.
Sure.
On New Year's, or on daylight savings, when we spring ahead, falling back, you gain an hour of business. and
Yeah.
It's
So when it's
easier to
2:30, it
understand.
changes to 1:30.
Correct.
If it's on a weekend or 2 to 1. Yeah.
Correct, it's
Or
actually.
it's always on a weekend.
Yeah, the closing hours stays the same.
Yeah.
Because you fall back at 1 to midnight and then you close at 2:30. So
Sure.
you gain an extra hour. But in the spring, if you were to, and then this is all driven by federal law.
Yeah.
And so our laws have to mesh with the federal.
Sure.
And if you follow the federal law at 2 o'clock, you spring ahead to 3, well, we're
Doesn't
stuck
matter.
in that 2:30 and
Yeah.
you have to close at 2. So what we did was pass a law that said in Wisconsin, daylight savings is after bar time. So you keep
Keep the regular time until the 2:30.
till the, right. And
Everybody's done the
so
walk
it doesn't disrupt business.
Sure.
Everyone understands it a lot easier.
But on New Year's,
There are no closing hours
there's
on
no
New Year's.
closing hours.
Right.
So you could be open all night if you were that crazy
And
to do it.
the thought behind that, a lot of people say, well, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Well, the thinking behind that is we don't want to have people at midnight, and if New Year's falls during the week, that means 2 o'clock closing, which is 1:30, getting people out. The thought was, let's not force people to leave after they've been all
Sure.
these people. A lot of places have dinner or snacks
Yeah.
or something, and kind of a wind down. And so that's why we don't have those closing hours for New Year's. So
And I think another big thing is you. Like, the people that are taking this course, they're responsible servers. I like the fact that they're not at some friend's house where they don't have that false sense of security and they're actually being monitored by somebody that's being responsible and making sure they're being taken care of.
right, and somebody who's doing that's part of their job.
Mhm.
And so it is important. They do serve an important role. And being able to see, hey, that person's had too much to drink. I need to make sure that they are not going to get in a car and drive home.
Exactly.
And give them a safe ride or whatever the case may be.
Sure.
But that's the role and the responsibility of those servers.
Now, we talked a little bit about federal law, state law, and then kind of going into like municipal code. And that's where a lot of the gray area comes in for a lot of licensed servers throughout the state. What are some differences between like state law and municipal code? And municipal code, so you guys know, is like if you're in Green Bay, and Green Bay is like, well, we're going to do something that's a little bit aside from the state law. or have their own components. Can you give a couple examples of that?
Yeah, it's if I could change one thing in the industry, I would have everything apply statewide
Yeah,
the same, because it would make it so much
Simpler.
more simple for people to understand.
sure.
But some municipalities say, well, we're going to do it this way, and we establish a point system. We're going to say this. And many of those instances conflict with state law.
Yeah.
So then we step in and try to say, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah,
But in other areas, municipalities, we have home rule, so they can decide what these laws are as long as they don't conflict with the state or federal. And it makes it difficult. A lot of municipalities will have different laws than surrounding municipalities, and it's hard to make sure to understand all those. While we may not like it in some areas, it's the job of the owner to know what those laws are, those ordinances are. That might be different for their business in one city as opposed to another.
what's a common one you see in many different municipalities that you find yourself dealing with that confuses people?
Well, I think the one that comes up a lot is putting points on a license.
Like a demerit system for a
demerit system.
licensed establishment.
We believe, and most law enforcement agrees.
And we're not talking about a bartending license, we're talking
No,
about the
right,
liquor
the
license
liquor
for the
license.
establishment.
Correct.
Yeah,
And we believe, and I think law enforcement believes, if you see a problem at your establishment, call.
Yeah.
We want you to call. We want to make sure to respond if there is an issue, whatever that issue may be. Many municipalities have said, well, we're going to create this system of demerit points. So if you have an underage violation,
Sure.
that's a demerit. If you make a phone call to the police, that's a demerit. So what you've done, I don't think by design, but what they've done here is they've created a disincentive
yeah,
to do outreach, to call law enforcement, to say, hey, there's a problem here, to try to prevent a bigger problem from happening.
Yeah.
Because many of those licensees don't want to have demerit points.
Sure.
So that, I think, has created a lot of backlash. In fact, in some areas, they've kind of changed some of their ordinances to not create that disincentive
yeah,
to engage with law enforcement. So I understand what they're trying to do. We want to weed out bad actors, but you can do that anytime throughout the year. You can
Yep.
suspend a license, you
can
can
revoke.
revoke a license, or you cannot reissue a license.
yep,
And whatever, you have to have cause.
Yep.
You can't do it just because you don't want to have a tavern there. But if there's a bad actor, and there's bad actors in every profession.
sure.
We don't defend bad actors, but it also needs to be a situation that's fair and people have the ability to operate their business and make sure they can have their livelihood.
Yeah, it's just as important, like when you get your server's license, ask the owner, is there any municipal code I should be aware of? For instance, like if you do serve somebody underage and it gets, you get caught for it, you get a fine. And that fine goes directly to you, not your establishment.
To that point, one other area, a lot of municipalities now are passing these sober server ordinances.
Yes.
And it all sounds good. I mean, oh, sure, that makes sense. Well, that means if you're at a VFW and a volunteer who's bartending, and they're open 4 hours a night, and they want to have a beer, 1 or 2 beers with the rest of they can't.
Yeah,
We aren't advocating for servers to be drinking. That's not at all what
No.
we're doing. But we don't think that an ordinance should come in that would have an adverse impact on situations like that. So
Yes.
that's another area where we try to have outreach with the municipality and work with them.
yep.
You know,
And
and
that's something that does happen in different municipalities to where, like some do have sober servers. You'd have to ask your owner, like, am I allowed to drink while I'm on the job? Like, have an after shift beer or a last half hour beer or something like this. So,
And most of our members have their own policies.
Yep.
And most of them say
yeah,
you're not drinking while you're working.
very well regulated.
Yeah.
Any advice that you'd have for new servers entering the field?
Well, I think the best advice is to understand that there are consequences.
Yeah,
And the laws are there for a reason, and to take them very seriously. So make sure if you have a question, there are ample areas where you can get that question answered, whether from the state through local tavern leagues.
Yep.
But to reach out and make sure you know if you have any questions, but to take your role very, very seriously. It's an important role in making sure that we have a safe, regulated industry, and the server is the most important of that. Because in many cases, the huge increase we've seen in Safe Ride is
Yep.
because those servers are doing their job.
Yep.
And they're saying, I don't think you should drive because you've had one too many.
A giant increase in safe rides, giant decrease in drunk driving.
50% decrease in fatalities over the last 10 years.
That's
which
fantastic.
is tremendous.
It's-
So we need to,
It's not zero, but it's trending in the right direction.
right, and we need to continue that. And servers are part of the reason we've seen that increase in
Excellent.
those results.
Scott, a lot of great information. I want to thank you for
Yeah,
coming out
thanks.
today. I
You
appreciate
bet.
it.
Thank you, Don.
Good luck, future service.